People get very offended. They'd say, I'm not descended from a monkey. How dare these scientists? I'm not descended I'm no monkey. I'm a human being. I'm descended from a stick made from Adam's spine. My mother was made from a stick that came out of Adam's spine. I'm Adam's son. That's what he would say. Except I'm not his son. I'm his great 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 admirer and fanatic. That's what you'd say if you're a Genesis enthusiast. And then, of course, there's the other type of Genesis enthusiast who thinks, oh, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of Phil Collins. I watched their latest farewell tour recently, Genesis. Phil Collins spent the whole concert sitting in a chair. He's physically unwell. He sat in the chair singing the whole show, couple of hours. And then the musicians had to move even less than usual because they didn't want to show him up. The fella with the keyboard kind of stood at the keyboard, and the fella with the guitar just stood behind the guitar mostly. He rarely stepped out in front of it. They only have two instruments in that band. Apart from Phil Collins, who's usually singing and not playing the drums, they have the fella who presses the buttons on the keyboard. He's basically a typist. He's a glorified typist. And then you have the other fella who's pulling the strings on the guitar, making sounds with that. And that's all it is. And then there's Phil Collins saying stuff through his mouth in a musical way. I suppose that counts as an instrument. Your voice is an instrument, I suppose, in a way. And your drums are an instrument. And that guitar is an instrument, certainly. Now, that keyboard thing, no, that's just a keyboard. You're typing music, that's what you're doing. If you wanted a sophisticated version, the people who do the notes in court cases, employed by the court, they're called court stenographers. And they're like typists, except they do highly specialised shorthand typing that nobody understands for the life of them. Now, if you're a keyboardist in a band and you're just playing music directly by pressing the buttons, then you're not like that. You're just the equivalent of a normal office typist. But if you could elevate that somehow to the point where you're pressing the buttons and not only is it playing the music, it's printing out sheet music as you go along because you're that good at it, that might be as impressive as a court stenographer. Until then, no, not that you're in direct competition with them, of course. It's not that important. Don't get all worried or offended. If you're a keyboardist in a band, don't get all, oh no, this fella thinks I'm not as good as a court stenographer. You're in a different line of work. It's okay. You're not competing with each other. Well, the only way that we can competing with each other is if you're called up for jury service and you'd have to try to explain to the judge why your work in the band is so important, you need to be excused. The judge can just say, oh, that's very impressive, but have you seen our typist? Let's pitch you against them and let's see which is the most important place to be on your weekday for 3 days in a row with expensive. No. So I suppose there's that. But then, of course, you can say, I'm in a band where there's only 3 people and one of them is Phil Collins, who's half dead. I don't know if he even can play the drums anymore because the drums are what are killing him. You explain that to the judge and the judge will say, oh, that's true. To be fair, we have got more people to take the workload in here. We've got 12 jurists and a couple of spares, and then we have the lawyers and the barristers. You have me, of course. So I suppose, yes, that's a fair point. You go off. Your band needs you. If there's only 3 of you, yes, go ahead. Just don't play any shit. Play some proper music. You young people play proper music anymore. You probably don't. And then the judge, of course, will say, oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. It's none of my business what you play. In fact, I don't want to know what you do for a living. Don't tell me. And the keyboardist, of course, will say, it's a bit late, Your Honour. I've already told you what I do for a living. And the judge will say, of course, no, you've told me you're a keyboardist. We haven't discussed whether or not that's what you do for a living, whether that's your main occupation. Or even if it is your main occupation, it may still just be a not-for-profit hobby. Maybe your other half is a breadwinner in your family. Even if you're a full-time keyboardist, that can still count as a hobby. I suppose it is an occupation, just not a job. Well, you see, we're going down the road of talking about it too much now. It's none of my business. So off you go with your Genesis thing and do that. And of course the keyboardist from Genesis, what's he called? Is it Mike and the Mechanics? Rutherford? No, the other fella. He'll say, yes, Your Honour, thank you very much. I'll take my leave now, and then he'll leave. And they go out and record that song in the living years. He'll say something, 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 something. It's probably the wrong fella I'm thinking of, is it? The keyboardist. And no, he's not the one who did In the Living Years and did Mike and the Mechanics. And even if he is the one who did that, he's still not the one who did that, because the Mike out of Genesis who's in Mike and the Mechanics is not the singer. So he's really just a guitar player in that as well. So he's not even the keyboardist in Genesis, so he's very much the wrong person I'm referring to. He didn't do that. So I fucked that one up royally, didn't I? At least he's got out of jury service. Into your head. If you ever have an opportunity to experiment with different ways of maintaining an orange cordial and tap water hydration regime, trying to cut down on the likes of fizzy, caffeine-free Coca-Cola Zero, hypothetically, for example. If you ever have an opportunity to play around with orange cordials that you add to tap water in a bottle. Now, the way I do it is you start off with a strong one. A respectable amount of cordial into the bottle, top her up with tap water, and drink a few mouthfuls of that, and then add a bit more water so it's a bit more diluted. And then eventually, with every refill, it gets further and further away from being a child's orange squash drink, and more closer to being the pure tap water that an adult is supposed to be drinking in this world. Problem, of course, with that way of doing it is you have tap water in it that's getting older and older by the hour, older and older by the minute, by the second, by the hour, by the 12-hour passage of time, by the 24-hour passage of time, by the week. And hopefully you don't have tap water that's on the go for a week. But it's not impossible, unfortunately, with this regime, because you have a big bottle of water, you have your cordial in it, and you keep topping up the tap water element of it. And you're very conscious of the fact that you can't just throw it away, because then you're wasting cordial. You wait till you get to the point where it's almost down to pure water, and at that point, maybe, you can consider emptying out the bottle, washing it out, and starting anew with a fresh batch of cordial. And no, you have to be wastage conscious if you're going to do this, because the whole reason you're drinking shit like this is to feel good about yourself, presumably. You're not going to feel good about yourself if you're wasting cordial like that. If you're going to do that, you might as well be just back on the fizzy piss, whatever it is. You might as well just be drinking that whole day if you're going to do that. You're not going to feel good about yourself if you're wasting this shit. So no, I'm under a bit of pressure at the moment because I have this bottle that I distilled 2 days ago with a reasonably substantial amount of cordial in it, but the rest of it is 2-day-old tap water. Because for some reason I set this bottle aside and didn't drink from it for a couple of days. Hasn't even been in the fridge. Now I know you Americans live in a society where if you drink a beverage that hasn't been refrigerated, you think that's exactly the same as piercing a hole in your radiator and putting a straw into that and sucking out whatever water is in there, if you have radiators. You probably don't. You probably have some sort of a contraption that half the time is an air conditioner and half the time is a heater. So it's either sucking or blowing 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Over here we have radiators. Because the only conditioning we need to do to our air is to make it warmer when it's cold. When it's not cold, we just let the air be. We let it be. We let it be. What's that song? It's a Beatles song. Oh, this is a bit weird. No, I'm not going to do that on the harmonica. I just remembered we played that song at my mother's funeral last year. So I'm not going to perform that as a thing about cordial on a humorous podcast. No. I do something by the Monkees instead, perhaps. What's Daydream Believer? Is that a Monkey song? I think it is. Oh, what can it mean to a dream believer and a homecoming queen? Now, what that's got to do with the discussion here is, well, the answer to that is nothing. Nothing. Well, what are you going to do? Am I supposed to pick the songs for my podcast in advance, analyse them, and run them by a solicitor? No. I have to make a last-minute decision sometimes, and I made a last-minute decision there. I think it's all for the best. I hope everybody's all right out there. I hope everybody's alive and well. I don't mean a listener here. I mean, I hope everybody outside of this room is alive and well. I hope the cats are okay. I think my wife's either about to or just gone out. So I hope anyone who's out in the broader outside world is okay as well. I hope whoever's driving past this house into the cul-de-sac has realised that they're fast approaching a dead end and is ready to come to a stop. In fact, they'll have to do it before that, because before they get to the dead end, there's a 90-degree bend in the road at the bottom of a steep hill, so you better have your shit together if you're going down there. And the way I see cars flying past this house on this road, I really don't think a lot of them have their shit together. There's a very steep road going down into a dead end. And before you get to the dead end, as I say, there's the 90-degree bend, where if you don't stop, you can end up going into a ditch and down in an embankment and onto our main road, where not even our cats would dare to venture. So if you're going down the road like that, have a bit of, I don't know, use the brakes. I don't drive, so I don't really know what you do in that situation with a vehicle. But if in doubt, put the brakes on. Reach for the brake lever and turn the brakes on, and then leave them in the on position. See, brakes on, you probably have an electronic button for the brakes these days, do you? Don't really have mechanical switches anymore. You have what they call soft buttons, where you press it and the button doesn't go down, it stays in the same position. You touch it. It's more like a touch screen. So you reach for your touch screen and you press the brake button. I presume that's how it goes. Do they call those brake pads? Because a lot of these apps, for example, they have apps that some podcasters use for sound effects and things, and you have an interface, and the screen is divided into these boxes called pads, and they're basically touch buttons. You press a button, and each one is called a pad. So if you have something on there for your car app for driving the car, is that called a brake pad? When I was younger going on a bicycle, each wheel had a pair of brake pads on them. So I presume each wheel on a four-wheeled car has a pair of brake pads on them. So you'd have one pad on the screen for each brake, or maybe you can press two together so you can multitask. And then you've the spare wheel, of course. Now, you probably don't need a control for that, do you? But what if you have a puncture and you change the wheel? You have to reprogram that pad button thing on the touch interface to go, oh, the wheel that was in the boot of the car is now the back right one. So reboot this button to that. I suppose that's sort of automatic as well. Sounds a little too complicated for me. I think I prefer just the old days when you had on a bicycle, you had a lever on each handlebar. One was for the back brakes and one was for the front brakes. And then if you were about 8 and your parents bought you a bicycle and they didn't realise that it was a girl's bicycle, all your friends did and everyone in the neighbourhood did, but your parents didn't, and you had a bit of manners, you were a decent, well-behaved child, you didn't give lip to your parents, so you didn't say a word about it. You just used the bike until you drove it into the ground naturally after 3 or 4 years, and thank Christ eventually the frame broke and it needed to be scrapped. And no, if you're one of these kids, you get these bicycle. There's a thing I used to call a back pedal brake. You pedal backwards and that functions as a brake as well. I don't know how it works. Does it control the back brakes or the front brakes or something? It does something. It does something. I presume on the cars though, on the older cars, it's just a switch. It's a switch, brakes on, brakes off. That's a sensible way to do it. One switch for the front brakes and one switch for the back brakes. And then if you want to get going, you switch the brakes off. Now that could be confusing, because what do you label that? Do you label the on position, do you label that on for brakes on? Or do you label it on for car on when you want to switch the car on? You switch the car on. You want to switch the brakes off. I don't know. So maybe the whole touchpad interface thing is simpler. Because you just show a picture of a car stopping and you press that. You say, yes, I want the car to stop. I'll select this. So that shows a car stopping. But how do you show a car stopping on a still picture image? Maybe it has a GIF, a little short clip of video. Each pad on the screen has a little short piece of video where the button is a loop of a car stopping. Surely that could be mistaken for a loop of a car starting. How is a car stopping look any different from a car starting? You'd have to have audio with it. You hear the brakes screeching, I suppose. That would give it away. You listen to that. You hope you don't get confused with something that's happening on the outside world and your car or other cars around you. You need to remember, be careful with the audio. Is that the audio from the GIF, the video loop that's labeling the button on the touchscreen? It tells me which button is for the brakes. Then, of course, you press it and then your car, if it's not maintained properly, your car screeches. Well, at least it stops. So that's good. Wait a minute though. The buttons, would they all be emitting a soundtrack simultaneously then? You're trying to select a button from this interface. One of them is a loop of a car stopping and has the audio of the brakes screeching so you can identify it as a car stopping. Then the other one presumably is for the car starting up and it has the sound of a car revving up. You'd hear all of those simultaneously. I suppose you could have it where you just, when your finger hovers over each pad, it plays the audio for that particular video and the other ones are muted. I suppose it could work like that. So then you finally find the one that's the brakes screeching sound. You press that and then you hear identical sound of your car brakes screeching. Then if you've had a car service, they don't screech. So you press this button that you picked because you heard screeching on the audio. Then you press it and you don't hear anything. And you think, that's not working, that's a fault. And you go down to your service garage and you say, I pressed the brake screeching button and the car appeared to come to a stop, but there was no confirmatory screeching sound from my actual brakes to match what was happening in the video. And they'll say, I'll fix that by swapping out the video that's on that button. I'll have a video of a car quietly coming to a stop. Of course, that'll be hard to identify then. I suppose I could do it the other way and just leave the video and make your brakes intentionally screechy, but not dangerously so. I suppose there's ways to do that. They tell you about these electric cars that are too quiet. Some of them are going to have the audio of an engine, so people like me can hear your car coming even if your engine isn't capable of making a sound. It'll play recorded audio of an engine. I suppose you could do that with the brakes. Have a recorded audio of the brakes screeching so the driver can tell they're working. Suppose that could work. But then how do you know if there's something wrong with them? Suppose an indicator on the screen, I suppose. Or else you crash into the car in front and that's how you know, maybe. Of course, by then it's too fucking late.
Are you going into your head?
Once upon a time, there was a dog, a dog, a dog, a dog, a dog, a dog, a dog. Basically, a dog. And this dog was walking along a runway one day. Well, former runway. He was doing this in my imagination because there's an episode of Air Crash Investigation where there's these pilots completely run out of fuel and they have to make an emergency landing somewhere. There's no airports. The pilot remembers some old military base that he's familiar with because he used to use it about 50 years prior to that when he was in the military as a pilot. And they've no way of contacting the ground because nothing on the plane is working. The engines are gone, most of the electronics are gone, so they decide to land on this airfield runway. They have no idea that the place closed down many years prior. When they get to it, there's some sort of event going on the tarmac. The locals are having some sort of an event, a street party or something like that. Everyone has to get out of the way. They nearly run over 2 kids who are on the runway. Now, I don't know if there's any dogs involved, but there could well have been. There could well have been a dog on that runway, that old abandoned runway. Perhaps just walking along, minding his own business. Perhaps he's been brought to the event by his owners. Walking along, minding his own business, and suddenly there's a commercial aircraft looming down on him from the sky. Looming down on him. Like some sort of predator would if he was a dog who lived in the jungle. Do they have dogs in the jungle? I'm not sure. There are plenty of cats in the jungle. They have parrots and things. They have snakes. The dog, I think, is one of the few household pets where I can't readily think of a cousin that I might have in the jungle. I can't think of anything. Is there? We don't have coyotes in the jungle, surely. They're somewhere else. They're from that place that place in the cartoons, the place with all the red rocks that's usually in America. It's usually somewhere between California and the middle of America, isn't it? Some mountainous region. That's where they put their coyotes and their road runners. Some place with red bricks. It's the only place comparable to the scenery on the Roadrunner cartoons that I've come across on television has been Breaking Bad. Now, in Breaking Bad, they do a lot of scenes out in the desert, in a rocky region of desert. I think it's somewhere like Arizona, perhaps. I don't know. I don't know my geography of America. I think it's somewhere like Arizona or somewhere just east of the west coast of America. Just east enough of the west coast to not be on the west coast. It's inland, so it's cheaper. And you get property cheaper in the desert, some hellhole mountain that's full of road runners and coyotes and things. There's no reason to be afraid of a road runner. Apparently they can't fly. They just simulate it by running very fast. They wind their legs around in circles like they're winding themselves up, and then they run very fast and make a stupid sound that's entertaining to children. Entertaining to 5-year-old children who've never seen anything else. They see this and they're easily entertained to think, oh, this is great. I've never seen anything like this before. These people, this coyote fella, he's a bit like our dog, our family dog. He's a bit like him. And then they have this thing, it's a bit like our family parrot. Except it's very similar because he doesn't talk. Makes some stupid noise that sounds like a human is making it. A parrot does that. A parrot sounds like a human when it speaks. So if it went meep meep, it wouldn't seem out of place because that's something a human would say and that's something a parrot would mimic. So the Roadrunner is very much comparable to a parrot. It's just has a better run of the open space. It gets to go out into the open spaces and go up and down all these mountains and terrorize someone's dog. That coyote is probably someone's dog. They got out of the car during a picnic and ran off and got lost and they couldn't find it. And now it's stuck there. It's just some dog trying to survive. And we all think, oh, look, the evil coyote trying to kill a roadrunner. He's trying to figure out how to get something to eat. We all have to eat. Even coyotes, even lost dogs. We all have to eat. Every single one of us. Well, there is a few people. Mainly, I think, in India. Those Indian saints, there's a few of them who achieve a meditation status where they get to 130 years old and they manage to get to a state where they don't have to eat to survive. They manage to nutritionalize themselves with just air and a bit of water and they survive just fine. They sit there meditating. They say, oh, I'm in touch with my body. I get all my nutrition from thoughts, because my thoughts are very nutritious. So I make sure that when I have thoughts, I let them go and then I let them flow. Oh, I don't know how that gets from your... How do the thoughts get from your brain to your digestive tract? That's the thing. You don't even know what thoughts are. Nobody knows what thoughts are, not even the scientists. They go, I don't know what a thought is. The nearest we have to knowing what a thought is saying, here's a piece of tuna. Tuna is brain food, so if you look at a piece of tuna, that's a raw thought. So you're supposed to look at this piece of tuna and say, that's a raw thought. That's not even raw, it's highly processed. It's in a tin, it's being chopped up. I've never seen a real tuna in my life. I have no idea what a tuna looks like. I don't know, is it a big, huge thing? Or is each flake of tuna a whole fish? I know the flakes of tuna aren't actual fishes. Well, is that the size that a tuna is? I don't know. Because there's this fella, Heston Blumenthol. He does cookery shows. He runs a high-tech restaurant and he does this thing with the peas. He grets the peas. He doesn't like to serve peas whole for some reason, but he likes them to look whole. So he grinds down the peas. He puts the peas in the blender. He makes a pea paste, does whatever he wants with them, seasons them, makes them taste nice, whatever he does to them to make them taste nice. And then he reforms them into fake, reconstituted pea-shaped balls. They look like peas and I suppose in a way they are peas. They're just not natural ones. They're made from natural peas. It's a bit like that. Whatever I was talking about just before that is a bit like that. I don't know what I was talking about though. Oh yes, tuna flakes. I'm not suggesting that each tuna flake is a tuna. I'm just saying I don't know what a tuna looks like in real life. Is it the size of a tuna flake? And they put them all together and grind them down until you have flakes that happen to be the same size as a tuna? Or are they huge and ground down into flakes? I don't know. How many tuna are in the average 30-gram can of tuna? Or tuna fish, as you Americans call them. We call them tuna. You don't need to add the fish thing. That's a waste of breath. You don't need to say tuna fish, you Americans. You like to abbreviate a lot of things, but then you'll be talking about going out on a bus and you'll say public transit disestablishmentarianism importation when you could just say get the bus. Anyway, this dog, he's on the disused airfield, former military runway, and there's this commercial aircraft about to land. Now, I don't know whether it's the actual commercial aircraft involved in the real incident that happened, where incidentally it made a reasonably safe landing and people got out and the two kids on the runway didn't get run over, either in real life or the reconstruction. Well, this dog, he's looking up at the sky and he's wondering, wait a minute, is that plane I heard about where I had to make a landing on the disused military runway and I had no contact with the ground? Where it wouldn't have been much use anyway because it's not the sort of place that has air traffic control. I had to make basically a blind landing. Is that the aircraft in that? Or are they filming a reconstruction? That's what the dog's thinking. There's no way of knowing really. And either way, does it make any difference either way? Well, it does, because if it does, then the dog should at least be being paid as an extra in this whole reconstruction thing. And if it's not being paid as an extra, it should have been warned that there's going to be filming something very dangerous on here. Back when there was a military base, they used to warn people, like they do in the Irish Army military camp in the Curragh in County Kildare. They put signs up every now and then saying, oh, we're going to be testing explosives or something out in the open spaces here on such a day, and everyone needs to get away because you might get blown up. This is a disused military base, but surely if it's being reused for a reconstruction, they'd have to put signs and warnings up saying, hello, we're reconstructing a huge air incident for air crash investigation tomorrow between 2 and 4. Anyone who's on the runway will be paid as an extra, but you need to register. But if you're not involved in the reconstruction, you should probably just get out of the area and not get run over by this plane. I don't mean the plane won't land on you because it's somewhat in control. It's making a gentle landing, so it's not going to land on you like a helicopter that plummets straight down from the ground. But it might well run you over while it's trying to come to a stop on this short runway. So you might get run over. You'll be on a runway. You can get run over on the runway by an airplane just the same way you get run over by a baggage truck. And it's the same thing. And the plane could be crashing down from the sky, but you still call it being run over. Because you're dead either way, or you're surviving either way. You don't care whether it's an airplane, whether it can fly. If the baggage truck could fly and it was coming in to land and it run you over, it would still be just as bad as a normal baggage truck coming along and running you over. It's the same thing. Makes no difference whether the baggage truck can fly. You should just do that. There's no need to be loading your baggage onto the plane. It holds up flight boarding and everything. Takes all sorts of red tape and procedures and makes everything complicated. Just have flying baggage trucks. We're going to have flying cars very soon. We should have flying baggage trucks. They load the baggage on. As soon as that particular little baggage truck is ready to go, you can even make it like a drone, remote control. Load all the baggage onto a luggage truck that instead of going out to the aeroplane, it just immediately takes off and flies to the next airport and dumps your stuff there. Then collects up another load and brings it back for the return flight. That's how you do it. No need to be loading all that stuff onto a plane. And now you're going to do the same eventually with the buses that bring you out to the airplane. Load the passengers up onto that. Now you probably have to make sure they all have seats. A lot of those things, it's standing room only. There'll be enough buses so that every passenger got to sit down on the bus. And then you have a flying bus that takes off, goes wherever they're going, brings them precisely to their destination. In some cases, it mightn't even have to go into the airport. But it's a quiet time of day. Every airport in every major city has a motorway highway nearby. Just land on that. Then come to a stop near the airport, dump everyone at a bus stop where they can get a bus straight into the city and avoid the airport. Now I know what you're thinking there. You're thinking customs and excise, immigration, basic rule of law and civilization. You can't have people going somewhere and not spending 2 hours going through an airport terminal. That's just wrong. You want to oppose all change, and let's just keep going on the way we've been doing it since the 1950s. Just have everyone getting on this huge contraption of a plane. That's no way to live. My father was never on the plane in his life. He thought they were horrific, appalling contraptions. And my father was born in the 1930s, lived until 1989. He thought air travel was an appalling thing. He thought, no, you don't go on that. They crash. They crash and everybody dies, or somebody dies, or you get injured, or something terrible happens and they crash. They crash, they go up into what goes up must come down. I can understand it. I was on my first plane shortly after he died. I was on my first plane trip, and I found it a bit scary. Also a bit confusing. I had a stop off at Shannon Airport in the west of Ireland, and then we took off for the second leg of the trip, which was going over across the Atlantic. And for a long time I could see what I thought was a harbour wall and a very straight-looking coastline. I was watching this for about an hour and wondering why we weren't making any progress. It turned out I realised sometime later that's the wing. The wing of the aircraft, the dull grey thing that melts into the dull grey sky above this country, like it's being camouflaged or something. That's when I started to wonder, am I on a military plane now? I suppose it doesn't really matter. Well, you'd think they'd have told me. Whereas I knew the flight number. It was Aer Lingus EI-133, if I remember rightly. Now, if you were to look that up, you would find that's a very popular and regular and long-running commuter flight from Ireland to Boston. I presume it's still going. Is it 133? It's been some time since I was on it now. So I might be getting confused because the bus to this town where I live is the 133 as well. That's a bit confusing. That bus went to the airport for a while and then it stopped going to the airport. And they missed an opportunity. You could have got the 133 bus to the airport and get straight on the 133 plane to America. And is there a 133 bus at Boston? There probably is. Buses in Boston are they're a bit American. There's nothing wrong with being American, don't get me wrong, but I got on a bus there with my mother. This was back in the days when every normal country you could still get on the bus and give them money. They'd print you a ticket and they'd speak to you. Well, we get on this. It has one of those contraptions that we've never seen before at this point, the early 1990s. You're supposed to put the cash into this hole and there's no change. The driver doesn't say anything. You're supposed to just know how much it is and where you're going. Apparently, the fare to every point along that route is exactly the same. So my mother put something like a $10 note into this contraption, expecting change to come out somewhere. And the driver just sat there looking annoyed or vexed or wondering what was going on. Well, apparently no powers to speak. If you don't allow your bus drivers to speak, you should allow them to speak over there. They probably have some very interesting things to say. All the things they've seen. They've seen a lot of things. They've seen me for a start. They've seen me several times to a place called Brighton. So that's where I was staying. And then I got off the bus and then I walked down a bit. And you go past this CVS place, and then you go down a bit more, and then you get to, what's that place called? The Store 24, is it? I think so. And you get to there, and then you realise you've missed your turn, which I would do a lot in those days. It's quite a complicated place to find your way around, I found. And that's where a bus and plane and bus combo with the same route number would come in useful. I suppose that's a bit too much to hope. At least you have the luggage thing, so there's that. Now I know what you're thinking there. Rather uncharitably, if you don't mind me saying so. You're thinking, that man, born in the 1930s, is my father you're talking about, by the way. He's called him Mr. O'Carroll. Have a bit of respect. He's from a day when people used to have a bit of respect. You'd wear a tie at weekends in the garden. You'd call people Mr. You certainly wouldn't start letters with hi. Tweet from your bank saying hi Neal. You would not. You'd say, Dear Mr. O'Carroll. You'd have a full reply address with the name of the person who you're dealing with, their office number, their desk extension, and this wouldn't be happening on Twitter either. Not because it's X now, but because Twitter didn't exist. Banks used to correspond with you by letter. Most of you young people, you've probably never written a business letter in your life, have you? And never mind all that, that's not the point. The point is you're saying my father, who was born in the 1930s, and was rather anxious about the idea of getting in the air in a tin can and flying through the air at a fantastic speed with a couple of hundred people crammed in with you. He never went on the plane in his life, and you're thinking, that's a bit silly. You're thinking, there were men in the 1910s going up in fighter jet all the time, and no fear at all. They go around in fighter jets, absolutely fine, flying all over the place. Most of them didn't even have a co-pilot or a stewardess. Now, the difference is, firstly, they all got killed. Well, half of them got killed, or else they killed others. If you were in a plane, if your pilot had to fight and kill people on other planes just to get you to your destination, you'd be a bit nervous about flying. And the reason those fighter pilots weren't nervous was because they weren't the passengers. They were in charge. Through the whole flight, they were thinking about flying. They didn't have to worry about, is that a normal noise coming from the back? Are we supposed to be facing this way? Is the sea supposed to be parallel with the window pane? Is the sea's surface supposed to be parallel with the window pane? All that stuff. Pilots and those things didn't have to think about that. And passengers didn't either because there were no passengers. It's only in the 1950s when these planes started having passengers on them, and by then they were finished shooting everybody. The pilots were not having to shoot people to get you to your destination. They weren't having to drop bombs on the way. Sometimes there'd be situations, and they still do, whereby they'll have to offload fuel. If there's a change in, if they have to make a diversion to a nearby airport a lot earlier than planned, they dump a load of fuel, but that's the nearest you get to dropping a bomb. Now, apparently it's perfectly safe to dump fuel. You just do it over water, and it just sort of disintegrates in the air. Just turns into, it's like if you fart, it's gone within seconds. If you fart, just disintegrates in the air. You smell it for a couple of seconds. If someone happened to be swimming in that water when you drop the fuel, I don't know, would they feel like a bit of drizzle or something, or water vapor? I don't know. Or is it disintegrated before they get to them? Or do they smell aviation fuel? Or do they smell the people on board shitting themselves more than they smell they probably smell that more than they smell the aviation fuel. From what I understand, the fuel just disintegrates. It probably disintegrates a lot quicker than whatever is coming out of the screaming passengers. But no, they wouldn't normally be screaming when you're dumping fuel. That's just a thing you do on your way back to the airport to avoid being involved in an incident where you're going to be screaming. Well, no, you get on these planes. Once they started up in the 50s and 60s, they separated the military flights from the passenger flights. So you get on a passenger flight as a passenger and you were treated like a king. You see pictures and videos of these early commercial flights from the 50s. They treat everyone like a lord. They'd say, "Hello, Lord." Or even better than the banks. The banks would say, "Hello, Mr. O'Carroll." The air stewardesses in the 50s would say, "Oh, hello, Lord O'Carroll. How are you today?" If you were a sir, you'd say Sir Neal. If you were a lord, you'd say Lord O'Carroll. And that's only in England, of course. We don't have that here. We're not subjects to any monarch. Well, no, they say that. I think that might be what my father found off-putting, because my father worked his whole life in a bank. He thought, I'm keeping this bank respectful, being respectful to customers and staff, as saying, a very formal man. He'd write letters. He'd say, "Dear sir or madam, dear Mr. whoever you are." But he didn't go around serving you dinner on silver plates and giving you champagne and stuff. So he probably felt his banking sector was threatened by all this. But the banks, when they started, the early banks in the 1800s and 1900s in this country, they all started by building these huge palatial branches in the cities that look like there could be a palace. You still see them here. There's still some of them left. One of them was for a while used as the parliament in this country. So you have these fancy buildings. They're made like palaces. They were made as a confidence thing to trick you into believing that your money was safe in these places because they're like palaces. And the same was done with shopping centres, except they weren't trying to trick you into confidence. They were just trying to trick you into thinking there's nothing outside of this building you need to see. So when they built shopping centres, they built these huge malls with nothing on the outside except concrete. You go in, you wouldn't see anything outside. Well, you might see a strip of sky through a bane of my existence ceiling things that they have now in these shopping centres. They have these shopping centres. Everything's bright white, blinding white light. Then they have these glass roofs. You can't see what's outside, but you have a huge amount of light coming in, and it blinds me. Blinds me to a pulp. Is that the right phrase? Blinds you to a pulp? No. Grinds you to a pulp? No, that's not right either. Well, that doesn't turn me into a pulp at all, so that's not relevant at all. It just blinds me. Makes it even more difficult to see than it already is. So fuck you, modern architecture. Anyway, suffice to say, I know what you're thinking there. You're thinking, no, that's a bit much. That man was born in the 1930s. He lived through World War II, for Christ's sake, even if he was a child. He was a man of the world, worked in a bank, Presumably drove a car. Yes, you're right. That is a presumption, a baseless presumption, but he did. He drove many cars and he liked cars. But he never got on a plane. Because a plane is not the same thing as a car. A plane is like climbing inside a balloon. And not a hot air balloon, just a balloon. You get a balloon and you climb inside that and then you let someone else control it. So you have no control over where you're going. You don't even get to control it. I think maybe these planes might have been more comfortable to the nervous flyer. And there's no reason why you can't do this. If you look in the cockpit, each pilot has an identical set of controls. They share a kind of lever in the middle, but they have their own controls. They can swap over and swap controls. There's no reason you couldn't have a dummy one of them in each of the passengers' seats. Suffice to say, don't be all snobbish about people who don't want to fly. They want to fly, they just can't because they don't have wings and they don't want to do it unnaturally because they know, for one thing, that's unnatural and wrong. It was an era when you did things that were natural, and if it was unnatural, you didn't do it. Driving a car wasn't unnatural because you were on the ground. The wheel had been round long enough for it to feel a bit natural. We were used to circles. Wheels were okay because the wheel is a natural thing. It's a circle round for thousands of years, and it's the shape of a planet. The whole universe was founded on circles and spheres, so a circle is the most natural thing in the world. That's why every television channel, you look at every news channel, every cable channel, the little logo they have in the top right corner, 70% of those are based around a circle or a disc or a globe because those are the most comforting shapes for human beings. Some designer somewhere realised, I'm not making this up. They do this. They use circles in these logos because the human mind finds them somehow appealing. So they do that. Look at a circle now. Look at it. As it happens, maybe this is why I'm talking about circles so much. I just realised I am looking at a circle right now. There's a circle right in front of me. It's a big white disc. The record button on my iPad. I'm staring straight at it now. It's blurry, but even then I can see that it's a circle and it's very comforting because I can see that I'm recording. It's all about the circles, but not balloons. When you're afraid of flying, you feel like you may as well be inside a balloon that's being handled by someone else, maybe carried in the beak of a pelican. Do pelicans fly? I don't know. Do pelicans even exist? I don't know. Are they like dragons or something? I only know them from a joke book I had as a child. There was a joke book I had as a child that had some poems in it. As one of them was, a wonderful bird is the pelican. Its beak can hold more than its belly can. Which reminds me, if you go to intoyourhead.ie/vanity, you can get a free copy of my new small e-book of nonsense verse. intoyourhead.ie/vanity. You can download the ebook for free. It's absolutely fucking fantastic. Not for children. Nonsense verse for proper grown-ups who like nonsense verse. intoyourhead.ie/vanity.
Into your head.
If you're listening to this at the Science Research Base near the North Pole, I'd like you to try the following experiment, please, if you don't mind. And if it doesn't breach your contract as an experimenter for whoever employs you, presumably the government or a government, whatever government is going on up there at the moment, or is it just chaos? Or else it's the most peaceful people on earth from all different countries live in peaceful cooperation in a beautiful demonstration of how we can all work together if we put our minds to it and we don't even need to go up into a space station. Maybe it's like that. I watched an episode of House MD recently where House, the genius diagnostic, has to assist a doctor who's at the North Pole or somewhere and who's the only doctor there and she's the patient. She has to operate on herself or something and he has to help her over video. That didn't look peaceful at all. That looked terrifying. That poor woman was terrified. And the man who had to help her, this non-medical fella, he was taking instructions from House over the phone. to try and save her life. He was absolutely terrified. Now, I know it was all acting. None of it was real. Well, there are real doctors at the North Pole, I assume. They have research labs up there. They have bases. People go and stay there for months and months and months and months and months and months on end. They do sciencey stuff. They go into some research place. It's like being on Mars, except you are technically able to go out into the open. You can breathe out there just about, but it's fucking freezing. You wouldn't want to. At least on Mars. If you had to leave the building, go out. You're in the Mars colony, you had to leave the building, maybe get something from the storehouse over there. And you had to hold your breath for a minute while you ran over because there's something wrong with your spacesuit. At least you'd be nice and warm. You wouldn't have to go, oh, it's fucking freezing. The minute you go out, you'd be ready, you'd hold your breath. You can hold your breath against the no air thing for at least half a minute. And there's nothing you can do to brace yourself against the cold, the freezing cold. I remember going to school once when I was between 6.5 and 8.5 years old. I remember being walked to school one morning and the wind was so strong in my face I thought I was going to suffocate. I had difficulty breathing. And that's what it's probably like living at the North Pole. You don't have that on Mars. Not least because you're not on Mars. You're not on Mars, unless you're listening to this in the future on archive.org and you're on Mars. Somehow they've managed to keep archive.org going. You're on Mars and it's 2175. That'll be the year of my 99th birthday, incidentally. And also the 99th anniversary of Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen going to #1. Although that was technically the previous year because it happened in December of the previous year. It was still #1 in January, so it still counts. Then, of course, it charted again about 20 years later after Freddie Mercury's death. Oh, technically that would be a new release. Does it count as the same thing charting again? I don't know. It's definitely the same song. I'm certain it was the same song. I'd recognise it anywhere a mile off. Anyway, you're in. What did I say it was? 21. Oh, did I say 2175? Oh, that would be my 199th birthday then. And 199th or 200th anniversary of Bohemian Rhapsody. Oh, well, you're certainly on Mars by then. Unless you failed to get selected or you haven't chosen a life as an astronaut. Well, you wouldn't be choosing a life as an astronaut if you're going to live on Mars. You're going to settle down there, presumably. You're not going there to be an astronaut and be flying off the Earth every couple of weeks on some mission. No, you're going there to live on Mars. It's not like Ryanair or somewhere. The big airlines have these hubs and you're based at some hub. I don't know if you have to be living in the country where the hub is. Suffice to say, you're there at the base. I'd like you to try, actually now that I think about it, if you're 199 years in the future, there's no point in you doing an experiment for me because there's no way you can report it back to me. Unless you've invented some way to successfully notify me about it, which surely I'd have found out about it by now unless I'm not very observant. I'll keep an eye out though. I've got my phone here propped up in front of me so I can see notifications coming up in it. I just got one saying that the previous segment has been processed by Auphonic and it's ready in Dropbox or wherever it is for me to process further on my computer later. So I am keeping an eye out for stuff like that. If it happens in my peripheral vision or somewhere that's not on a screen stuffed in front of my face in dark mode, then I might miss it. So be careful about how you send me your notifications. Then they figure out something on Back to the Future. They got a message somehow to the scientist fella in the Wild West era. Oh, maybe they didn't. He got a message to them. That's not the same thing at all. If you're sending a message from the past, you just have to put it somewhere. I think he put it in his car somewhere when he hid his car. He got a message to the future somehow just by leaving something there for a long time, which I don't consider to be legitimately transmitting a message. If you're just leaving it there, saying, I'll leave it there and he'll find it in 150 years' time. No, that's not sending a message. That's just giving up and leaving it there and hoping for the best. I suppose if you put a lot of thought into preserving it and hiding it and putting it somewhere where it'll be kept safe and private but still reach the expected recipient. I suppose you have put some effort into that, so it does count as doing something useful. Well, it's not sending. Anyways, that's the North Pole for you. Or maybe it's the South Pole. Where do they do the experiments in these science stations? Is it near the North Pole or near the South Pole? I don't know. I used to live in a place called Athy in South Kildare, and it considered itself famous for approximately 3 things. One of them was that explorer who went to the North Pole. What was his name? I forget his name, but they're always going on about him. He's from Athy. Managed to get to either the North Pole or I think it was the North Pole. I'm not really interested in the North Pole and the South Pole stuff. I'm only really interested in climbing Mount Everest and similar mountains. I'm not interested in stuff that's just walking along for 850 miles. I'm sure it's quite an achievement. It just doesn't interest me. And this fella from Athy, he was one of the first people to get to the North Pole or something, or he didn't get there. Reams and reams are being written about his trip. Nothing written about the first 40 miles, which I, having lived in Athy for 15 of the last 20 years, I think that would be a significant part of the effort of travelling. Because for us being many years where the bus service was extremely inadequate, the train service wasn't great either. I don't know where he's meeting up with these other explorers. I think they're probably from England, but he'd have to get, presumably, in those days, he'd have to get to the ferry terminal, either Rosslare or Dunleary or Dublin. He's not going to get to Rosslare easily from Athy. How do you get to Rosslare from Athy? You'd have to get about 8 buses. It might have been easier in those days, because that was before all the intercity buses started bypassing Athy because of the traffic. What's your man's name? I'm going to look it up. Explorer from Athy. Ernest Shackleton. I have nothing further to say about him. It's just that recently I've done a lot of segments where there was a name or something I couldn't think of, and I added it in the notes later, but I never spoke the name on the actual show. This time I'm going to speak the name. Ernest Shackleton. Ernest Shackleton. Ernest Shackleton. I can't say I remembered his name, but I looked it up. I made the effort. I looked it up. I said, Ernest Shackleton, that's his name. So that's great. It gives it a sense of completion to the segment. Bit of a sense of completion. I even remember, which I don't usually, that I started this segment saying, if you're in that place, I'd like you to try the following experiment, please. I remember to come back and discuss my experiment request, which, as you know, ended in me going, oh, that's not going to work because you're 199 years in the future. Well, I came back to it, so it's complete. This segment is complete now. I declare this segment complete and whole. Fantastic. It's a prime example of what a segment on this podcast should be. Usable. 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 To use the French. So usable is also usable. Because you say it, but it's also English. That's even more usable. It's a multilingual word. You can say usable or usable. I presume the French for usable is usable. Stands to reason, doesn't it? I haven't looked it up or anything. I did study some French in school. I have no idea what the French for usable is, but I presume it's usable. It sounds credible. Sounds like it could be that or should be that. So that's good. It's usable. What's the Irish for usable? Is it, I don't know. Uside? No. Probably something very inconvenient. But it's also, whatever it is, it can't be usable because none of you understand Irish anyway. So at least French, there's a good chance. If you're listening in America, half of America speaks French. Half of America is in Canada. So you're all French. You're going around going, oh, convienza, excuse que avez une bouteille de coca, s'il vous plaît. I can't remember any French. It's all gone. I remember a French teacher trying to get me to read some detective novel or something. Was it Maigret or something? Comes out to me in the yard. I'm standing there in the yard being ignored by everyone because I'm a loner. And this French teacher thinks he's going to somehow help by having me be the only kid who the French teacher comes out to in the middle of lunchtime with her book and says, "Here, Neal, I thought you might like to read this." Why? Why did you think I might like to read this? For one thing, it's in French. It's a whole fucking novel in French. I can barely read a word of French on the homework you gave us. Oh no, you just come out here. Oh, here's a kid standing there looking weird, being alienated by his peers. Oh yes, I know what I'll do. Make a big show of the teacher coming out and chatting to him. Not really chatting to him, having an awkward thing where he gives him their book. No, thank you. Don't do that to your children or to your pupils' parents' children who are your pupils. I know they're not your children, but you're responsible for them. Don't fucking do that. Use your brain for something other than learning foreign languages and teaching them. That's what you do. Use your brain. Maybe a better idea than using your brain. Maybe we'll look into that, but would you not have to use your brain to come up with that anyway? No matter what you do, you're going to need to use your brain. Even if it's something you don't really have to think about, your brain is still involved subconsciously somewhere. So when I say use your brain, your immediate reaction shouldn't be, why should I have to use my brain? Because your brain does everything. Your brain does fucking everything. Just doesn't do it well enough, and that's what I'm trying to help you with. Teacher who's probably long dead. You're probably long dead now, are you? Mister. You probably are. Well, if that's the case, may you rest in peace. May you rest in peace for a very long time. Until such time as whatever the fella in the religion class next door told us happens. What happens? Is there a final judgment or something? No, he didn't tell us that, because the fella in the religion class just spent the 2 years showing us in weekly installments of 17 minutes on videotape. Mississippi Burning. And he was a proper religious instructor because he was a brother very close to retirement. Suppose you never retire from being a religious brother. You just become a retired religious brother. They put you in some house somewhere. You foreigners probably don't know what a religious brother is. It's a bit like a monk, but they're a bit more chilled than the monk. Well, a bit more unchilled. They don't sit around meditating all day. They run schools and they live in the house beside the school. And of course, they're all dying out now, just like the priests. There's none of them left. They're going the way of the dodo. Who gives a flying fart? Oh, that brings us full circle, doesn't it? Who gives a flying fart brings us full circle back to what happens to fuel when you dump it from an aircraft and how it behaves differently to wind that you expel from your body. And then the other half of America are Mexican, down below. When I say the other half of America, I mean the parts of North America that are not part of the United States. The top bit of that, most of the top bit of the North America is French. And then there's a bit at the bottom. I don't know my geography very well, but I think it's part of the upper continent, isn't it? I think so. I think Mexico and all the places around there, Mexico and Puerto Rico, they're somewhat attached to the main North American continent. Or are they in the stringy bit down between the two Americas? I don't know. And don't scold me for that, because for one thing, if I did know my geography, I'd be more likely to know the part of the geography that's from my home continent than yours. I'm not in America. And for another thing, you don't even have the same maps. You have your globes, you put America in the middle of them. We get not our globes, our atlases. You have America in the middle of that. It's in the middle. Then you have Europe over to the right, don't you? Well, we have our part of the world in the middle of that map. Russia over to the right. Australia way, way, way over there to the right. And then you go over. I was fascinated by this as a child. We didn't have a globe in the house, but we had atlases and maps. You look at a map of the world. Beyond Australia, you'd see all this stuff. You see New Zealand. I think you'd see Tasmania. Or you see all these places that have vampires and things that may or may not have existed on the map or in real life. That was fascinating to me. I wonder what's down beyond there. You go over to the right, you go up a bit, and you see a little tip of something up near the top. And it turns out that's Alaska sticking out to the left. It's leaked out from the left end of the map and it comes out a bit onto the right end of the map. To me, that was fascinating. I didn't think about it much again until recently. I heard there's this fella in Russia, some engineer or something. He wants to have a global highway, London to Alaska or somewhere, or around the back of the globe. Well, the back of our globe. It's probably the front of your globe, is it? Yes, probably it's the front of your... Well, on your American globe, you'd see it coming out the left side of America, or go over to the left of the map, and then you see, oh, this road is run off the map. And then you'd have to run over to the other side of the map and see it coming in on the right edge. And you're doing that in the car when you're trying to navigate. That would be rather complicated. I suppose if you bring a stapler, staple the two sides of the map together at the back, so you have somewhat of a cylinder shape. You can't bring a globe in the car. That's not practical. Especially one that's the scale that's big enough to be able to navigate the roads. Now, I think we're once again approaching the end of the program. I say once again because I've got into the habit of saying this at the end of episodes the last few weeks. So it's not the first time this has happened. We've approached the end before. And not only have we approached the end before, I've recognized and acknowledged it before. So don't worry, I'm not claiming that this is some new thing. I was just going, oh, look, I've just noticed the structure of my podcast as it approaches the end at some point. I'm just pointing it out and illustrating it. Look, structure, isn't that great? It's not great at all. I don't want structure on this podcast. I want it to be a complete mess that I can string together later and delete any shit without any continuity errors. I don't think I want an ending on it at all. I do like having a thing where I acknowledge that it's the end. So I'm doing it anyway. So I suppose that's reasonable, is it? Is that reasonable? Oh, who's to say? Who's to say? I'm to say. It's my show. Show. I'm calling it a show as if it's a fucking Christ almighty. The arrogance of it, calling it a show like it's Law and Order or something, or The Late Night with Dakota and O'Brien. No, it's not a show. People have no business calling things show. That's nearly as bad as, not quite, but nearly as bad as when I hear podcasters refer to their listeners as fans. You don't have fans, you're not Aerosmith. You have listeners. You're a man in a spare room talking to himself while his cats meow impatiently outside. Suffice to say, you're not Aerosmith. Do Aerosmith have a podcast? Maybe they do. Alice Cooper has a radio program. That's not the same thing, though, is it? He goes out as a podcast as well, but that's not the same thing. And he's not the same thing as Aerosmith. It's just that when I was younger and starting to explore American bands, I came across Alice Cooper around the same time as I came across Aerosmith, and I considered them to be roughly the same thing, which they're not. They're not even from the same era, are they? And then you have Bon Jovi. They're a lot more like Aerosmith than Alice Cooper are. So it's rather unfair to lump Alice Cooper in with the likes of Bon Jovi and Aerosmith. Although I would argue that it's also unfair to lump Aerosmith in with the likes of Bon Jovi. And it's unfair to lump Bon Jovi in with themselves. Because they're not really themselves, are they? They're John Bon Jovi and some other people. It's not fair to lump them all in with John Bon Jovi. No, they're individuals. They're a group of individuals, all with their individual talents. They're not all John Bon Jovi, so to call them Bon Jovi is unreasonable and unfair. That's the sort of situation you had. You young people don't remember, and neither do I. I've just read about it or seen a YouTube video about it recently. Rod Stewart was in a band called either Faces or The Faces, and at some point they got to where he was like the Phil Collins of the Rod Stewart world, becoming a solo artiste in his own right. and his band felt like they were becoming effectively his backing band. So eventually they all fucked off. I think one of them joined the Rolling Stones, and they said, "No, fuck this shit. Go off and be your Rod Stewart in your own name. Don't call yourself the Faces with us. We're not part of your face. We're not one of your faces, and we're not part of your face." The fella who left to join the Rolling Stones, he does look a bit like Rod Stewart. At least he does now. He has a very similar face. Ironically, they all had from that sector of the industry, all the people from the Faces and all the people from the Rolling Stones had very similar faces. I don't think it's all from plastic surgery, because they look like that when they were younger too. They have that mouth thing going on, and they have that. I don't know, are they just pulling a face, or is their mouth shaped like that in real life? Or did they get stuck like that from pulling a face? I don't know. Well, they all have that face and that mouth, that Mick Jagger mouth thing. It was even satirised in that Spinal Tap film. They have that face. Well, I presume they're putting that on. Surely they didn't go and find comic actors who happen to have that face already. Maybe they did. Maybe they were musicians in their own right, and they'd done the whole getting the face thing and getting a band together and doing the face and getting as far as they could get in the music industry and then becoming actors who played musicians. I don't know. I only wonder about these things. But I'll know more about this as I watch more YouTube videos. No doubt it'll keep recommending more videos about this stuff to me. And I'll know more about that world as I go along. And it'll probably come up in future episodes, and I'll mention more about it then. So that's something to look forward to, isn't it? Filler. That's what it is. Filler. That would be a good name for a band. Filler. Has anyone named the band Filler? They should. If you're a kid and you're starting a band, you can have that. You can have that. Filler. Call it Filler. So anyway, as I say, I think we're approaching the end of the program. The best way to know is if we're closer now to the end than we were when I initially mentioned that we were approaching the end, then we're definitely progressing towards the end. The way to really know that we're approaching the end is that I stop. I'm still getting through this bottle, by the way. The bottle of 2-day-old tap water that's got the relatively costly cordial mixed in with it. It'd be a third of a bottle left. I've just remembered I am having something spicy for an upcoming meal, so that should get rid of it. So that's not a problem. Having a spicy meal, that'll deal with it swiftly. Of course, I'll probably start a new cordial then, and I'll put too much in that again. Get through half of that, and then start all over again. Oh, not to worry. Not to worry. It's the circle of life, as the song goes. With my harmonica. It's the circle of life. It's the wheel of fortune. It's Elton John. Although I don't think he wrote it. He doesn't write his lyrics. He has a lyricist. Maybe he writes the music. I wasn't really. I think we'll agree I wasn't performing the music of Elton John. I was just alluding to it. I was just acknowledging Elton John exists. That's all. Elton John exists.